All right, we are live. Let's give everybody a second to get on in here. Welcome, everybody. Letting the coaches log in. Hey, Connor. Hey, Isha. Hi, Aaron. All right, let's go. Welcome, parents, coaches, and team owners to another edition of hashtag FFT Live presented by Fitter and Faster Swim Camps. My name is Tyler Clary, and I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing here at Fitter and Faster. I hope everybody is enjoying our live series so far. Let us know in chat where you're from and what swim team you're representing. If at any time the chat begins to get overwhelming, you can minimize it. There's a button right over here at the right-hand side of your screen. It's a red button with 3 vertical white dots, and that'll actually minimize the chat panel for you. Also, if you have any connection issues, like, for example, if all of us freeze, you can use a button up at the very top of the screen that says reconnect to reconnect yourself to this room, and it'll bring you right back. So please don't spam. If you spam, I will ban you from this webinar. We really don't want anything like that to be taking away from our great panelists today. That being said, I'll try to keep the chat enabled for questions as you think of them. But if it begins to get too much, I'll disable it and we'll reopen chat at the end for questions. We really want everybody to participate in this discussion. This is a little bit different from most of our panels because, we're trying to engage directly with y'all today. So as questions come in or you have comments about what our panelists are saying, please let us know. With that being said, let's get started. Welcome to this episode titled Keeping Engaged with Your Swimmers. We know that right now is a tough time for swim clubs, and we're trying to follow up our discussion last week with more solutions and open discussion about how to navigate these next several weeks. Without further ado, let me introduce our panelists, Bruce Gemmell and Mike Murray. Mike Murray is the head coach for Victor Swim Club, a team of about 225 members in New York. And Bruce Gemmell is one of the top coaches for Nation's Capital Swim Team, which is a team of about 1,800 members with 12 training sites in the DC area. Welcome, Bruce and Mike. How are you guys?
Hi, Tyler. Glad to be here.
Tyler, doing really well. Glad to be here as well.
Yeah, we're really happy to have you on. Mike, Bruce, I've known you guys for a while, and y'all are great people in general. At least that's what I'm going to say on camera. But really awesome to have you guys here. And like we've talked about already, right now is a tough time for swim clubs, and you guys taking the initiative and volunteering some of your time to be here to kind of help guide this discussion and offer some of your ideas and advice. I think is going to go a long way for all of our viewers today. So, Mike, where are you at today?
We are in Manchester, Vermont. So it's about 4.5 hours from Victor, New York. Once the virus started to spread and we got shut down, we took the family out here. It's a nice, quiet country home. So we're very safe. We're very happy. We're very healthy. And we feel very lucky to be here.
Well, it's a great place to be right now, and I'm jealous because you guys get to go out and be in nature every day. And I live in a concrete jungle, so it's not quite the same here. Bruce, where are you at?
I'm in the DC area, working from home, like we're all getting used to these days, and trying to get out enough that I can keep my wits about me, and we're okay.
Yeah, for sure. Talk a little bit, I guess, Mike, we'll start with you. Talk a little bit about, you personally, how you guys are handling the quarantine and sort of what, your personal struggles or triumphs have been over the last week and a half or two.
Sure. So it's been a real challenge. We had the athletes training fully tapered, shaved, ready to go for our LSC championship meet. And the night before we were getting ready to leave, I got a phone call on the pool deck that our LSC championship had been canceled. So we stopped practice. I had to pull everybody out, explain the situation. We were still at that time allowed to train and use our facility. So we pulled together all of our team resources. Luckily, we had a lot of officials. We had an administrative staff that I was able to use. And we ran a mock time trial meet for about a session and a half of what the kids would have had. It wasn't sanctioned because that same day USA Swimming had pulled the sanctions, but we got to have some great suited up performances from our team. And we kind of used that as the season culminating competition. And it was a really positive experience because our kids got behind one another. But unfortunately, during the second session of our mock meet, our facility was shut down. So we had to regroup as a club family, and we've had to communicate to our membership, our families, that we are going to continue to offer the best programming that we can, but it's going to be in a little bit of a different modality than it's traditionally been. And that.
Oop, I think Mike's frozen on us. Oh, well, I think he was basically finished anyway.
Yeah.
Bruce, I guess follow up with that. How has this quarantine been affecting you personally?
Personally, I've been very fortunate. I'll be quite honest. I'm very lucky. My wife is a veterinarian. She's still going to work every day, so she's an essential employee, taking care of everybody's pets. I've got a daughter at home who got started right away, really before everybody else, with online schooling. So they've been up and running and fully engaged in schooling along the way. And I've had a chance to get a little bit more exercise in. I'm trying to be pretty aware of that over the last several weeks and making sure I'm getting my exercise in. And from a personal standpoint, I'm very fortunate. All the frustration and uncertainty is coming on the professional side. And most of it was uncertainty for so long, and things were changing daily. For a while there, we had kids in the water thinking that we were going to have an Olympic trials, so we kept them in as long as we possibly could. And then that got pulled right about the same time with it. We finally lost our last facility. So since then, we've been adapting to our new reality, 1,800 athletes club-wide.
Yeah, and that's I'm sure pretty much the same across the board for all of our people here watching. So I guess let's get right into it. Talk to us a little bit about what each of you have been doing and taking part in to kind of help your club weather this storm. You guys kind of alluded to some of these things already, but what are some of the big objectives that you've had, especially over the last week, to manage this situation?
So of course you're thinking of the athletes first. And for a lot of them, a big part of their life has essentially been taken away. So what we're trying to do is create a little bit of some normalcy to their daily schedule. So what I like to do is every morning before 10 o'clock, I'll send out a general team email via our Team Unify site. I try to update our athletes with some of the things that are happening with Fitter Faster, some of the things that they can log into and watch and kind of occupy some of their non-academic time during the day. And then what we've done is we've done a live Instagram at 1 o'clock every day, just a way for the athletes to engage with me on our public Instagram site, our commercial site. And they can ask me questions while I'm live, and I can address some of the things that they might be interested in asking me. And then after that, at 4 o'clock, what we've been doing lately is getting together as a group. We put together a dryland workout. It's 100% optional and voluntary. Last night, we had 34 athletes log in and do a dryland workout together, which is phenomenal. So basically, Tyler, to answer your question, we've been trying to do things that will create some sense of a normal schedule for our athletes. But at the same time, we want them to know that we care about our programming and that we're offering something during this time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. What about you, bro? What about you, Bruce? What have you been taking part in to kind of help your groups out?
Well, the first thing that we were trying to do was help them through some of the uncertainty. And I'm not sure that we could always give them answers, but maybe we could share that we were as uncertain as they were about exactly what might be happening, 3 days from now. I really feel the last few days as we sort of settled down to the new reality in a lot of ways that we may be with for quite some time here. All the kids have gotten online school going, so most of them are occupied throughout the day with that. And almost every day, sometime between 3 and 6 o'clock in the evening, which would be their normal practice time for most of them. We don't do anything at 5 in the morning under this new schedule. But, between 3 and 6 in the afternoon, they have a variety of options, quite frankly, depending upon their training group, their level, so on and so forth. I've got some great coaches working directly with me within a sited NCAP and other NCAP coaches club-wide who, the creativity has been absolutely incredible. I've got a under coach who has offered trivia night and bingo night and dryland night and is running a virtual 5K with the kids somehow. And she just says something more creative every day. I just got another note from one of our other coaches that they're going to be offering yoga every evening at 6 o'clock. So we'll be doing that online. I think we've finally gotten to a point where the kids either have a sense of what they're going to be doing for dryland or know where they're headed with dryland. For a while there, we were sending out things one day and then another thing the next day, and then some online things were being offered and so on and so forth. And we've sort of ironed out a dryland schedule for the kids. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't in a situation where I was telling everybody to go out and run 10 miles every day because I thought that was going to lead to injury right from the get-go.
Yeah.
I think some of them are well suited to run and have done a good job ramping up to it. In other cases, we offered a virtual dryland that they can do at home. I know you've had Lee Summers on who works with our groups. One of the challenges that we've had is figuring out exactly what access to equipment everybody has, and it varies for each individual. Some people have a full home gym and a Peloton bike to work with at home, and that's great. And others have a soup can and a bike they haven't ridden since they were 8 years old. So trying to get some people to figure out where their level of dryland can be with what they have available, and then get to a regular schedule as far as that goes has been our emphasis, along with staying in touch with them at least every 2 to 3 days, just checking in and seeing how everybody's doing and answering the questions that we can answer and getting the questions answered that we didn't know the answer right off.
Yeah. And, it sounds like there are some similarities and some differences in how, the both of you interact with your groups. And I'm sure that's the same for everybody that's here watching. I did get a couple of questions, and I'm not sure if you can see this one, and not to put you guys on the spot, but we're getting some interest in people knowing about Mike, your workout, your live dryland workouts, and the same for you, Bruce. It'd be great to have you guys on with us one day to maybe host a live workout to really benefit athletes at large, in addition to your teams. So if you guys would be willing to do that, we'd love to have you so we can talk about that another time. There's another question that came in. What platform are you guys using to run those live workouts?
Right. So at first, we weren't sure what we were going to do. Initially, we thought maybe we would do it on Instagram. Maybe we would do it on our social media platforms. What we ended up doing was I was talking to our admin team at Victor, and I said, let's go with Zoom, but let's actually get a pro platform on Zoom. So we actually purchased a $15 a month subscription to Zoom, and it's going to give you a lot more options than if you were getting the basic. So it really allows me to engage the athletes on a little bit more of a professional level. The pro package that we got with Zoom kind of gives me options to post the workout while they're doing it so that they can see something. So initially what we wanted to do is make sure that we had a platform that was going to be communicative to everybody, that they could log in, see the workout that we were doing. So we are using Pro Zoom right now.
Bruce, what platform are y'all using for your online workouts?
We're running them all on Zoom also. One thing that it may take a little bit time, but people have time these days in lots of cases. If we limit it to about 15, no more than 20 athletes, it allows the coach or the instructor to really work with each athlete. It's amazing, a few bumps the first couple of times, but you can instruct them pretty well. Hey, get that left foot up, don't forget to do this with your core type of thing. And the other thing it allows us to do is when the kid says, hey, I don't have a 10-pound kettlebell for instance, you can say, all right, well, what do you have? And we might end up using a 5-pound flour sack or something, but you really can interact if you keep numbers down to, make a pretty individualized workout in the group setting.
That's good. Honestly, not something that I had considered. I'm learning right now too. So this is great because we're trying to run some online, some live workouts here as well. And the answer, I guess, from our side, the platform everybody's using that everybody's on and that we're using right now is called Webinar Jam. And the upside to Zoom is that, you have the ability to get a lot of different people up on screen all at once and to be able to give them that tuning that the trainer needs to be able to give. But the downside to Zoom is that you have to download an app to your computer or to your phone. And some people all the time in the world, they just don't want to do that. The beauty of this platform is you just open up your browser and off you go. So that's what we're using. I did get a couple of questions. Are you guys collecting fees from your athletes or parents for these dryland sessions?
Not specifically for the dryland sessions, but we are still collecting our tuition. The way that we're set up so that the fees were already collected. So we're not monthly. We've already set up our fiscal year. So we're kind of set in that way. We are, having conversations with our administrative team on what our plans are for the future. But right now we're all set.
Bruce, is this an added cost for your athletes or is this something that's covered under their tuition?
Tyler, to answer your question, yes and no. We haven't set it up as option A, option B, option C, or anything like that. But the workouts that we send out to the group to do, to either do on their own or that we link them to a different site who might be running a workout, that obviously is all free and covering their tuition. We are asking them for a small charge for these small group dryland sessions. And when I say small charge, I mean very small charge, like $5 a session type of thing. So just enough to help us a little bit and help our dryland coaches who've had their business taken away completely, stay afloat. Yeah.
And that's something that, I think that we're all kind of seeing, especially coaches and team owners out there, is that the teams still have to find, like, it's a business. Like, you still have to find a way to keep the business running, right? You can't just continue to offer things for free. And in some cases you can, but, there's also the problem, Bruce, that you mentioned, that if you have these dryland coaches that can't do their business anymore, then you want them to be able to continue to offer that high level instruction, and you need to help them out in that way. One last question before we get into Mike's presentation. Are either of you noticing that pools are still charging rental fees even though you aren't in the pool?
We're very lucky in that we are not hooked to any long-term fee. So essentially, we have a phenomenal situation, and we're very fortunate to be in the position that we're in right now. So we are not paying any current rental fees or lifeguard fees. Thank goodness. I have some strategies for some clubs that might be in that position, and we can talk about that later. But currently, we're very fortunate that we are not paying any rent.
Bruce, what about you?
Yeah, we've got a bad news, good news situation. The bad news is that normally we pay astronomical pool rental fees. I mean, at least astronomical to me in my mind. But we're not paying any of those pool rental fees now. So all that money that would have been going to pool rental fees, we're able to keep. And the plan is, and you can talk to our business side of people a little bit further detail, is all of that money will be credited to the family's accounts for the fall season. So that's the plan, and as long as this doesn't drag on too long, we hope to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's good to hear both sides of that equation. And it sounds like you're both in fortunate situations. But do you have any suggestions for teams on how to handle this scenario where they may still be being charged for pool rental even though they're not using the pools right now? Because just like a swim team, the entities that govern those pools, they have to try to find a way to pay the people to be there and to keep the pool open and pay for heating and all this kind of stuff. Like, what do you have any ideas on how a team might be able to manage that situation?
So it comes down to your initial responsibility and contracts that you have with the different facilities that you use. We're in a fortunate position that our two locations, our main site and our satellite site, are both school districts. So because they're both shut down, we're not tied to any rental fees because we pay on, I believe we pay on a monthly basis. So it's not the biggest deal in the world because we're not worried about that. But what's super important, and I think Bruce will echo this, is when you enter a negotiation with a school district or a facility or whatever it is, you want to make sure that you're paying for that facility on a monthly basis so that you can plan for when that pool has to have some repairs or they need to work on the building itself and you have a shutdown. You don't want to enter into any negotiations long term where you're going to be locked into that contract no matter what. And that's essential for your business if you're a small business owner and a club coach, or if you're a 501c3 nonprofit who uses facilities. That's going to be one of the most important discussions that you have with the facilities that you use. So a couple of years ago, when I was first at Victor and we were starting the program, we were building a brand new facility with a school district, and we had to account for rental fees and other facilities that we weren't ready for. And we had to use a lot of our reserves for rental fees, and it put us in a pretty precarious financial situation for months. And it took years to build back from that. So yeah, and that was when I was a young coach, and at the time it was board run and we were still trying to figure out how things operated. But that was a really good lesson moving forward. So those are the kinds of things that coaches want to think about as they enter in negotiations with contracts in their facilities.
Bruce?
Yeah, we use in excess of 20 pools in the DC area, and the vast majority of them are on a per lane per hour rental basis. So when those facilities are closed, whether it's closed for a snowstorm or a pandemic or anything in between, we're not paying for them. In that 20 plus pools, there are maybe two exceptions to it, but most of them, the vast majority, it's a per lane per hour basis that we're paying, and they're all shut down by governor decree. So we're not paying any of that.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, let's get right into your presentation, Mike. I'm going to go ahead and pull that up and we can go through that because, I'm starting to see some questions that are going to be answered in your presentation. So let me skip back to the very front of it because we were looking at this earlier, and we will get started. Just bear with me. Here we go.
So it's just a little introduction here. I met with our administrative team a couple different times once we found out that we were not going to be swimming anymore. And I outlined a little bit of what we needed to be thinking about moving forward. So this is a little something I put together. So what you want to do immediately, and most of you have probably already done this, but if you have not, what you want to do immediately is have effective communication with your staff, with your members and volunteers. And you need to talk honestly and immediately about what the plans are moving forward. And you want to first and foremost ensure the health and safety of your athletes. The other thing that you want to immediately address is your financial viability. You have to have critical conversations with your board or with your coaching staff about how you're forecasting profit loss, how you're forecasting savings. It's really, really important. The next thing that you want to do, and this is something that you're going to get into right now, is these new stimulus packages have been approved. We had some executive administrative meetings about our options for the utilization of the coronavirus emergency loans. That's done by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. There is a PDF that I will send to Fitter and Faster so that people have a better idea of what's available. The next thing moving forward with your stimulus packages.
Hey, Mike, real quick. Do you have a link to that I can look up and I can actually add in chat so people can look at that?
I do. Let me see if I can get that to you.
And while Mike's looking at that, looking for that, the three of us were online yesterday just talking through, what we wanted to cover today. And he was sharing with me some pretty sobering forecasts for how this is going to affect his club. And if he's comfortable with it, I think it'd be good to, maybe share a little bit of that because, everybody's going through a tough time. And even though, y'all have pretty much set up your fiscal year, that doesn't mean that you're going to be operating the way that you would be. And I think to show that, these two wonderful coaches that we have here with us today aren't just siloed in a great situation, I think that would be good to share if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I think a lot of coaches are going through right now is, though we would love to be, bigger and have a much larger financial savings and be in a larger financial position than we're in, we have to look at our financial situation honestly and seriously and evaluate what moves are going to be the best things that help our club moving forward and help the sustainability for Victor Swim Club. So before I even had in-depth meetings with our administrative team, I have some phenomenal part-time coaches, and every part-time coach, to their credit in our program, texted me, emailed me, or called me and said, don't pay us during this time. And that was, as you said, to use your word, Tyler, it was sobering. It was humbling. It made me feel so appreciative of our staff. Our part-time coaches work hourly. They go above and beyond, as most of the part-time coaches in USA Swimming do. So to get that early support from them was huge. The other thing that we discovered, and we'll get into this in the presentation, the other thing that we discovered is that utilizing this stimulus package allowed us to put our full-time coaching staff, myself included, on furlough so that we can utilize the government stimulus package, get the same pay that we would get had we still been working, and be able to save club funds and club money for the future. So that was incredibly important. The other thing, when you're going through that process and when you have to inform staff that they're furloughed, being 100% transparent and honest is really important. And on Monday night, I had to send a really difficult text to my staff, and I had to say, look, we need to evaluate some options moving forward. No one is being eliminated from our staff, but there might have to be some changes in the short term so that we can sustain long term what our goals are as a small business.
And that's such an important point because, the financial implications of what's going on right now are definitely going to outlast the actual battle that we're experiencing with the virus. So that's a huge point. Bruce, I didn't mean to cut you off. What were you trying to say?
I don't remember that I was trying to say anything, but
sorry.
I'm reading. That's fine. I'm reading the chat over there, and it's where my thoughts are, pretty much daily. I've sort of accepted that our current reality is our current reality, however long that may last. But how we're going to transition out of this into whatever our new reality is, from a competitive standpoint and also from a financial standpoint, is where my thoughts are these days on a pretty constant basis. Gotcha.
Mike, you can continue on with the presentation.
I have some ideas, and the ideas that I have today may be very different than the ideas I have 10 days from now, but that's where I am.
That's right. That 100% right. And I can echo Bruce's sentiments because, we in New York here, obviously we're a severely impacted state in terms of the spread of the virus, social distancing. So we have a lot of things that are up in the air. We hear April 15th, then we hear April 30th. And in my opinion, I think the whole country should just shut down for a month. We need to kick the butt of this virus, get it out of here, and then move on. I think we'd be a lot better served by that. But to get back to, being super transparent with your staff, and we had two main messages, Tyler, and I talked to you about this yesterday.
Well, I think Mike froze. We'll give him a second to come back. Bruce, while we're waiting for Mike to come back, Mike, you were frozen. You want to back up about 5 seconds?
Yeah, sure. Really just had two main messages for our staff, that we're going to be with them during this process, and that we're going to walk them through in detail, the step-by-step process, and making sure that they're receiving the stimulus package through unemployment. And then finally, the last part of this plan was to make sure that we are virtually, and not every pun intended, offering and continuing our normal programming. So we have to understand as a team, as a leader in our LSC, that we are providing a critical role in the daily lives of our athletes, and we need to follow through with the mission statement of the club. So I need to, as the head coach, continue to offer programming daily for our team Monday through Saturday, just as if we were in normal operation.
Okay. You want me to move to the next slide?
Sure. So here I'm trying to highlight our team communication, and that's a typo. I have 4 main components here, and I talked to you about it a little bit earlier. The first component is a daily email before 10 o'clock so that I know I'm getting to everybody. And I'm sure people are sleeping in, which is great. But I want to send a general team email that outlines all of the updates that we know of with COVID-19 as far as it relates to our club. I want them to think about questions that they might want to ask me during our Instagram Live later in the day. And we are promoting all of the Fitter and Faster programming to keep our athletes engaged with swimming. The second modality that we're using is our Instagram Live, trying to have a goal of reaching more athletes and families on an engaged level. I like to conduct a live daily show at 1 o'clock, and we are seeing between 40 to 60 usernames from our team join that live feed, so they are getting information that I'm talking about. We talked about Zoom meeting. We've been conducting dryland routines together with our senior and our national group with senior prep. So we have our 12 to 18, 19-year-olds and some of our college athletes joining our Zoom meeting to do dryland. That happens every day at the same time at 4 o'clock. And then we have our Facebook updates. So in addition to our commercial Facebook sites like most clubs and businesses have, we also have a private site that's available only to Victor Swim Club family members. And it allows them to kind of see the workout. They can download it if they want. And it keeps them updated. And you can see in that picture above the Facebook updates with the exact dryland workout. And we can go to the next slide, Tyler. Now, we talked about this really quickly. It might be different state to state, but I'm just going to talk quickly about what we've done. So maintaining the financial stability of the business. This was our emergency options for COVID-19 considerations and our financial sustainability. And I'm assuming here, like NCAP, we're fortunate to be in a pretty solid position, but there are some real challenges. So some of the things that we're forecasting for, and Tyler, we talked about this yesterday. We are losing our entire spring fundraiser income, which generally was bringing between $2,000 and $3,500. Our team hosted events. We run 3 short course meets in the spring, and traditionally they've been well attended. We are giving up between $10,000 and $15,000 of our swim lesson program for the spring. We're also probably budgeting a loss of $8,000 to $10,000 in the new member registrations that we get for long course. We're expecting also to issue some type of refund and what type of loss that will incur. And then for our staff, it's a big part of the incentive program for our coaches, the loss of the ability to do private swim lessons. We also, on a positive note, are forecasting some potential savings. So our lifeguard and supervisor facility costs, that's major savings for us. Travel expenses this spring for sectionals, zones, and NCSAs. Hourly wages for our part-time staff who are very considerate of our business during this time. The exploration and potential utilization of the Chamber of Commerce coronavirus emergency loans. And our full-time staff considerations and using our stimulus package to immediately furlough staff and save current budgeted funds for salaries for our financial future. And we can slide. So managing our full-time staff during this virus, we're immediately placing furlough for our full-time staff. Again, so important during that time is to let your employees know how much you care about them and communicate effectively with them on the process. What we did was, and this was 100% my admin team, they walked me through this. We're paying our full-time staff immediately within this pay period for a half of this past week and an additional 2 weeks of pay to cover expenses while they're waiting for unemployment to kick in. Unemployment in New York State with the federal government is covering our full-time staff members' regular full pay. Each pay period would be as if they were normally at work with Victor Swim Club. Ultimately, we feel that this plan will save budgeted salaries for our full-time staff members, and we won't drain our budget, while at the same time effectively ensuring the pay for our employees, both in the immediate and future planning for the club. And I mentioned this at the beginning, but we need to ask and we need to be engaged with our staff members on how they're handling these uncertain times with their families. As a leader in your business and as the head coach of your programs, it's my opinion that you're responsible for ensuring that your staff understands you care about them and you communicate regularly and often. And then here's some pro tips for me, just to keep leading with positivity and leading with love. You can get a jump on your spring fitness. Bruce talked about that earlier. He's been getting out with the dogs. We're lucky to be quarantined here in Vermont. We've actually gotten over 70 miles and 3 mountain peaks since arriving, so we're staying really busy.
Well, that's a big point, not to interrupt, but that's such a huge point, because everybody's talking about this quarantine, and we have to all remember that we're not in Wuhan, and it's not like we're being confined inside of our homes and not able to leave at all. You can still get out. You can still go for walks. You just have to make sure that you're maintaining good hygiene. Try to avoid touching the elevator buttons if you live in a high rise. Stay 6 feet from people, but you can still get outside and you can still exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been fortunate to be able to do that. Diving into your bookshelves, getting into those books that you've always wanted to read. Maybe opening up some Maglishko and going back over, some of the Ernie Maglishko stuff if you have not. Really important. Make the most of this time to make a deeper connection with your family, especially with your children. We all know in this job, and Bruce knows, and both Bruce and I have been lucky that our kids have been swimmers, but utilize this time to your advantage. One thing that we've done is we've been trying a lot of new foods, a lot of new recipes. We got some bread baking right now as we speak. The other thing is create. I'm working on a couple articles about training for the 400 IM. And then the last one, little self-plug, get onto the podcast with Brett Hawk. It's been really fun to listen to, what he's got going on. Today he had David Durden on, and it's been an awesome podcast. And then Tyler, I think the last slide is just for people, if they want to connect with me, that's my information up there.
So we'll give everybody a second to take your information down. I haven't covered that up. Wanted to make sure I didn't cover that up. Bruce, you had mentioned earlier that you have, a couple of ideas for, how to manage this time right now, and fully understanding that, your advice right now may change even a day from now. what do you have to say to the people in chat that are in the same tough situation?
I think I mentioned earlier, I really feel like the last few days we've settled down to a little bit what we can and what we can't do. Up until then, things were changing constantly, whether we could, get out and do group. For a little while there, we were doing group dryland in the park, maintaining social distancing. Well, we're not allowed to do that anymore. And some other things like that but now we're sort of settled in. We're all stay-at-home order in the entire area. Dryland is what dryland's going to be. People who have bikes that they can use are going to have them, and so on and so forth. So I think that's the first time we've reached a little bit of normalcy as far as that goes. I'm looking ahead. I don't know whether I'm optimistic. Hope I am that, there's 3 weeks from now or 6 weeks from now when some of these restrictions start to get lifted. I'm not under the impression that one day we're going to go from where we are now to everything back to normal. So what's that going to look like? How are we going to be able to roll back into training? I fully anticipate still, lots of restrictions, whether it be of the mobility we have or the group size that we have or the facilities that we have access to. So that's where my thinking goes. The weather's starting to warm up around here. Everybody in the country's in a different spot, I know, but a couple weeks now, those people that have backyard pools will be opening them up. Boy, wouldn't it be great if everybody had one? Well, they don't. And some of them are 10 yards long, for instance, maybe. So I'm starting to think about, okay, if we start getting access to backyard pools, how are we going to use that? And what tools and equipment do we need in order to be doing tethered swims, for instance? I saw on somebody's social media the open water swimmer from the Netherlands was doing a tethered swim in probably a 10-foot inflatable pool. That's the kind of creativity that I'm thinking about. I'm not going to ask everybody to go out and buy an inflatable pool, but I'm sort of thinking people's backyard pools that aren't 25 yards long or aren't anywhere near 25 yards long, how we might be able to utilize those as the weather warms up. I'm hoping that we may be able to get to the situation where open water swims may be available to us. Right now, they're not. I don't expect them all of a sudden to be, full board, everything, but maybe we can go in very small groups and do some open water swims when the water starts warming up a little bit. And then the other thing I've got in the back of my mind is, how long is it going to be before we're either advised or allowed to do 50 kids in 6 lanes like some of us are used to doing. I can't imagine that that's going to be very popular for very long. So how are we going to run groups within the constraints of our facilities and the constraints of our coaching staff that may not be allowed to be any bigger than 10 or 15 kids in a full-size pool? And can we, in fact, afford to do that? So that's the thinking that I have. And what training can we get in the water, and what training do we have to get in outside of the water?
Mm-hmm. All right, chat. Well, we're going to open up the floor to some Q&A. So if you have any questions about what we've talked about so far, or any other questions that Mike or Bruce might be able to answer, please let us know in chat. And I guess while we're waiting for people to type out their questions and think those up, there was a good question that came in earlier. What do you think are going to be some of the lasting effects of this quarantine on how we train and how we engage with our athletes moving forward? Do you see a continued use of some of this online training as time goes on? Like what good stuff are we learning right now do you think is going to be implemented later on once this virus stuff gets past us?
I think that it shows you how important it is to develop team culture. And I know culture is such a buzzword, and some people are have an aversion to talking about team culture, but team culture is so critical in times like these, because I know, based on what we've done the last year and a half, I know that I can count on our athletes joining whichever modalities I'm asking them to join, and I can count on it being a big group. And I also can count on my athletes holding their teammates accountable. So, if Joey doesn't show up to the team dryland on Zoom, Matt is going to let him know about it. Or if Sally's not showing up to the team dryland, then Jen's going to tell her that, hey, where were you today? I was looking for you today. We have a team culture that everybody's all in, and everybody knows that we famously have the work works motto. But our kids really buy into that. So I think one of the things that you're going to realize during this time of shutdown and uncertainty is you better have a good team culture for things like this, because if you don't, things are going to get scattered, communication's not going to happen, and people are going to feel lost.
Mm-hmm. Bruce, what do you see from, what's going on right now that you could see working into your program once we get back to more, let's say, normal life?
Yeah. Whether it's right or wrong, we're in a situation now where they're really, they better be self-motivated to do the dryland that they need to do. I've got a little on log where they can log in how much they did that day, whether it's run or bike or hike or row or whatever it is. It's just sort of a self-check for themselves. I'm going to check it, and I have no idea whether they ran 3 miles or 13 miles. So,
let's hope that there aren't any swimmers in here right now.
What, running 13 miles?
I was saying, let's hope that none of the swimmers are in here to hear that you aren't checking your log.
Well, how can I check it? I check it and I see who's got what in there, and I've seen some great ideas in there. Some people are doing stuff that I might not have thought of. But if we pull some of the work out of the traditional structure of a program where everybody does 3 to 5 in the after school at the same place, well, maybe it's not going to be that way. I don't know. From a sports standpoint, I'm very concerned. And it is what keeps me awake at night thinking about this stuff, that I don't think we're going to have 50-person workouts for a long time here. And I don't think we're going to have 1,500-person meets for a long time here. And probably not having the 1,500-person meets is a good thing. But how are we going to run meets effectively in a environment where nobody wants to be with 1,500 athletes, elbow to elbow on a deck for 3 days in a row for 8 and 10 hours at a time?
Yeah. There's a good question that came in from Armando Ramos, asking about how you're dealing with USA Swimming insurance not covering dryland workouts at home. And before you guys speak to that, we actually had a webinar last week where we had Mark Hesse and Tom Avicius from USA Swimming on to talk about that. So Armando, I suggest you go to fitterandfaster.com/replays to look at that webinar, and you'll get a little more information there. But Mike, Bruce, can you talk to us a little bit about, what your interpretation is about how USA Swimming is or is not covering dryland workouts right now?
Right. So essentially the biggest issue has been supervision, right? So, our USA Swimming insurance covers dryland workouts and all workouts with the idea that they're being supervised by professional certified USA Swimming coaches. Though I could tell you that I could make a really strong argument for the fact that I am supervising the dryland workouts and the coaches who are also logged in with me during our Zoom dryland workouts. We just make sure that everybody understands that the dryland workouts are totally voluntary and that they're doing this as part of their personal responsibility of forwarding themselves as an athlete. This is not a requirement of Victor Swim Club.
Bruce?
And that's basically what we've done. We've taken the position that as long as we clearly communicate that it is 100% voluntary and they're doing it on their own as their personal growth, that's sufficient. Now, I'm not sure whether that's right or not. I should probably have a better idea, since I and my boss, club owner, are both on USA Swimming's board of directors. But his position and my position is that that's good enough for the unusual circumstances we're in.
Yeah, and everybody in chat, the big thing to realize is that nobody here has the perfect answer. Nobody here has the silver bullet. Like, everybody everybody's dealing with the same dynamic situation and trying to make the absolute best of it, right? So just make smart decisions, I guess, ultimately is the answer. Don't require your athletes do something and not supervise them. If you're going to suggest something or suggest that it's volunteer, like at least make some kind of effort to make sure that you're supervising them. So if it's over Instagram Live or if it's over Zoom, whatever that is, make sure you're doing some level of supervision. Guys, are there any good podcasts that you'd recommend everybody here listen to or watch outside of Inside with Brett Hawk or these webinars?
So I have always been, if there are coaches listening, there are always really intriguing guests on Joe Rogan. So I've always enjoyed that podcast. Chris Ritter does a great job. He has a podcast. He has a lot of different coaches, dryland professionals. So I've listened to a lot of that. USA Swimming was doing a Kickset podcast for a while. That was great. Some of those sound bits were great. But there are so many great podcasts out there that, you might even search, let's say you're interested in, age group development. So you search Paul Yetter in your Apple podcast, something's coming up, and then you're going to have a great, 45 minutes listening to Paul talk about age group development in this country and things that he's done. So, be creative in your search when you're searching in podcasts. Look for things that you're specifically interested in, and you're going to find something that's going to give you a lot of great content and a lot of great knowledge.
Okay. One last question that I thought was pretty good, and then we'll start wrapping it up here, guys. Do you do so in your online workouts? Are you differentiating your live workouts for different age groups and different practice groups?
So Tyler, we've been working specifically on our dryland with our senior prep and senior groups. And that's basically some upper level 11, 12s through 18-year-olds. There are different reps and durations for the length of time or the number of repetitions that the athletes are doing.
Bruce?
Yeah, all of ours are age and developmentally specific. There are different ones for the different age groups or different maturity levels. And we're fortunate that the dryland coaches we've been having working with them all along are the same ones that are working with them now. So they know which individual has trouble with which exercise and which one can handle a little bit more and which one needs to back off a little bit. Hey, Tyler, one thing I'd like a little bit of a plug here. You asked about podcasts. Sue Chen, who coaches my pre-senior group and does an awesome job with her kids, gets them together every day. She gets guest speakers on. Maybe we'll get you on as a guest speaker sometime. But then at the end of each group, she has one of the athletes in her group bring a race video that they found particularly inspirational or motivating or educational or something. And they play it for the group, and they talk about why they found it to be that way. And the videos that these kids come up with and can find, and the reason they find them is just amazing to me. The kid one day put on Anthony Irvin's 50 free from Rio, and he talked about how inspirational it was that Tony won gold medals 16 years apart and went into all the background. And the next day, somebody pulled up Diana Nyad's swim from Cuba to Florida.
Wow.
And talked about how inspirational that was. So, they're really covering the whole spectrum and why they resonate with a particular swim. One of them pulled up Katie Ledecky's 800 from this past summer at Worlds, which, wasn't one of her greatest swims over the last 6 or 8 years, but it's one where she was sick at and fought her way through it. And, just letting the kids sort of run wild and find a swim that they find particularly inspirational or resonates with them has really been successful with that age group. Every day they do one.
That's awesome. And that's a great idea. And I think that, the more content and activity and engagement opportunities that you give your swimmers to bring out what inspires them, not only is going to help them understand themselves a little bit, but will help you as a coach understand those individuals, because every different swimmer ticks a slightly different way, right? And that's so useful from so many different angles. One last question that I thought was great. Heather Grebe asked, are you doing any meetings or lessons based on character development? And I'm going to take that one step further. Are you doing anything during this time to kind of address the mental health aspect or the sports psychology aspect of what we're dealing with right now?
So that's a great question, Tyler. We have a wonderful age group coach in our program, Doug Zorno, and he works with our performance group, we call them. So a lot of 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds, a lot of introductory swimmers, and he's been doing a special Zoom meeting with them, I think 2 or 3 over the course of the last week, talking about those exact things. How are you guys handling it? Because at that age, you know, they're going to be really honest with you. At the age that I have, we have a lot of cynicism with things. But at that age, I think it's really, really important for our coaches to connect. And my staff has done that on their own. So that was something that they set up on their own without any direction from me, which makes me very proud of our staff. But that's definitely something that we're going to try to incorporate in our prep and senior and national group moving forward.
Bruce, outside of Sue Chen's podcast, you know, are you doing anything along those lines for your athletes?
You know, I was so focused on the first few weeks here in getting the physical routine or development in place that I have not rolled any of that out yet. That's exactly the stuff I'm working on behind the scenes that I haven't introduced to the swimmers themselves yet. But that, along with helping our athletes that are starting to look at colleges. I've got a big group of juniors and sophomores that this is on their mind. Some of them start thinking, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to. Well, just, you know, relax a little bit. Let's control what we can control and do what we can do. And I'm going to start rolling that out with my groups for the appropriate individuals.
Yeah, and that's kind of a funny point in chat. I want you to let us know if you're kind of experiencing the same thing. You know, my job when I started here at Fitter and Faster was to help drive registration sales, and we've had to pretty much postpone all of our clinics through the end of April, and that may very well extend through at least the middle of May for right now. But my job has changed, and you know, now I'm in charge of, you know, kind of running this webinar series. And I was talking to actually Anthony Irvin on the phone earlier this morning, and he had said, you know, I've done more work over the last 2 weeks just trying to, you know, keep things going and trying to be creative than I have in the last several months. You know, Mike, Bruce, have you been kind of experiencing the same thing, that you've been doing as much or more work than before all of this quarantine stuff hit us?
Yeah, I was joking with Nikki this morning. I said, I think I've done more work the last 4 days in terms of team communication and pulling together different opportunities for our kids than I have in a very long time.
Bruce, what about you?
Yeah, I've never been so anxious to get back to writing some workouts, though. You know, the stuff that we like to do and the stuff that at times during the season I might even complain about, like, oh, I got to write another practice. Boy, would I love to get back to writing a few workouts. The time will come. The time will come.
Yeah. So, all right, y'all. We're gonna wrap it up, but just to finish up, thank you so much for being here. You know, we've got a lot of shows that we've already done already, and you can find those all on our website at fitterandfaster.com/replay. And if you're interested in following along with some of our other upcoming webinars, you can find those at fitterandfaster.com/live. You know, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Bruce, for being here and sharing your time and some of your expertise. You guys are awesome. And again, the leadership and initiative that you guys have shown just by sharing what you've shared is really, really admirable. So thank you, guys. You know, once again, just to respond to a couple of questions in the chat, you will be receiving an email in about 2 hours for your viewing pleasure, and that'll take you specifically to the page on our website So you can watch that. Also, don't forget to pay attention to Fitter and Faster's social accounts. I've already talked about looking for the upcoming broadcasts at fitterandfaster.com/live. We're going to be announcing more webinars later this week, and we encourage you to join us whenever a topic comes up that you're interested in. Lastly, and I put this up on your screen, Fitter and Faster has a really valuable product called Swim Videos on Demand, and you can also find that manually at swimvideos.net. It's filled with hundreds of drills and really useful swimming information, along with explanations from our top clinicians. This is a great time to really sit down and pick apart not only what you're coaching, but think about some of your other swimmers and the way they swim, and see if there's any information that you might be able to glean there. Thank you very much to everybody who attended today. As always, stay safe, stay positive, keep a lookout for future events, and wash your dang hands. Goodbye now.
Thanks, Tyler.
Thanks, everybody.